Hi there, this is Dr. Anna Maria Helt, herbalist and microbiologist here with Basmati.com. And our herb of the week this week is oregano, which in its essential oil form is getting a lot of attention. And I'm going to come back to that momentarily because I have some opinions there. But it's a wonderful plant. So the botanical name is Oreganum vulgar. So Origanum is the genus, and then vulgar, Vulgare. It's always good to know what plant you're working with, botanically speaking. And it's highly related to marjoram, which is Origanum majorana. So that second part of the name is Majorana. Anyway, oregano is in the mint family, like a lot of the other spaghetti spices, things like thyme, for instance, marjoram, and others. Also the same family that has peppermint and spearmint and lavender, a really big aromatic family. And it's a really pretty herb to grow in your garden. You can grow it in pots, you can grow it in a garden bed. It makes lovely little flowers. And it's really handy to have it fresh for cooking with. A lot of people do use it as a spaghetti spice, so it is great in various types of sauces. A little bit goes a long way. You can use a pinch in things like soups and stews, on vegetable dishes, on meat dishes, and in fact, one of the reasons oregano over the millennia has been used in food is not just because of the flavor it imparts, it's also because it's a preservative. So it's strongly antimicrobial, active against things like bacteria, and it's also pretty strongly antioxidant, which also helps it as a food preservative. And so one of the reasons it's been used in cooking for so many centuries. So very easy to grow plant, oregano, and its name, oregano, is derived from Greek, and it actually means joy of the mountains. And that gets into some of the more folklorical and magical uses of oregano. It symbolizes joy. And it has been used to stimulate kind of visionary dreams or psychic dreaming. It has been used in spells for things like luck and health and protection and happiness. So if you're feeling a little beat down or run down or sad, maybe bring a little bit of oregano in your life. Now, I like to use the plant not only for cooking, but as medicine, as do many people. It has a very long tradition of use in botanical medicine. And some of the best ways to use it are, well, eat it, right? But also a liquid extract, so basically an alcohol and water extract. It's great as a tea. It's not going to taste phenomenal as a tea. It's going to be like kind of drinking pizza sauce, but without the tomatoes. But also you could use it as a freshly ground powder as well. And so some properties and uses for oregano, pretty strongly antimicrobial, as I said. And so in the respiratory tract, it may have some antiviral activity, antibacterial activity, and that latter one, antibacterial, is more relevant for things like secondary infections. The vast majority of respiratory infections start out as viruses, but what can happen is we can become susceptible to secondary infection if our reserves kind of get beat down a little bit, and so that secondary infection is often with bacteria. Oregano is also going to be helpful in the respiratory tract because it acts as an expectorant, which is something that helps us cough up or expectorate excess mucus. We need that mucus in our lungs and elsewhere on our respiratory system to help protect our lining from infection and from irritants and such, but too much mucus can then become a problem. And so oregano can help us clear that. And it's going to be more useful in those colds and flus where you maybe have more clear mucus, not so much in what an herbalist would call a hot cold and flu, where you're feverish and red and you've got kind of yellow, nasty mucus coming out, because it is a warming herb and it could possibly make you feel a little bit worse. But sort of colds that you can't kick, and where you've kind of got clear mucus and you're just trying to move on from that infection, it can be really useful. And it does make a good general cold and flu herb in formula with other herbs, and you can balance out its warming, drying energetics with, say, a more cooling herb like elderberry in a cold and flu preparation. or even a little bit of elderflower, and so there's a way to use it energetically where it's not quite as hot. Anyway, so it's a great respiratory herb. It's a great digestive herb. So not only are its antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties potentially helpful for the digestive tract, if you've eaten something maybe you shouldn't have eaten, it's also a great warming stimulant for digestion, and it has some bitter qualities as well, so it can help you produce your digestive fluids and digestive enzymes to optimally break down your food and absorb your nutrients. It's also what's known in herb speak as a carminative, and this is an herb that you can use if you have a tendency towards gas and bloating. And a lot of members of the mint family, the aromatic members at least, have this quality. And so what a carminative herb is going to do is it's actually, quite frankly, going to make you burp and fart a little bit after a meal, and it's basically helping you to clear that gas, which is much better than having it hang around, causing bloating and pain and discomfort. So it's going to move that air along, possibly up, possibly down, possibly both. Oregano is also a circulatory stimulant, and it is a circulatory stimulant through blood thinning properties, and so it has anticoagulant effects. So when your blood is a little thinner, it flows better through the body. Oregano can be a great mouthwash, especially as a tea could be a good way to go, where you can dilute that liquid extract in some water and swish that around your mouth to spit it out for things like gingivitis, overgrowth of unwanted bugs in our mouth. It has antifungal effects, so if you've got some skin stuff going on, you can maybe make an oregano preparation, an oregano wash to use to treat that, or maybe an oregano vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is a great vehicle to use when dealing with fungal infections. I tend to not use oil-based products on fungal infections, and so for instance making an infused oil, say an olive oil out of oregano, because that oil might actually provide a protective layer for the fungus. And so I prefer washes and vinegar-based sprays, or even alcohol-based sprays for that itchy foot and such. Now, oregano also has some anti-allergy effects. It has some antihistamine effects. So it could even be useful as part of a blend for helping with allergies as well. And then another great use is more a topical use, where you would find an oregano infused oil to be really helpful. So you can basically steep oregano in olive oil or almond oil or whatever oil you happen to have around, and use that as a warming muscle rub for achy muscles, or as a warm-up before you go out for a jog. That can be a great way to bring some blood into those parts of the body. So oregano is known as rubefacient herb, RUBIFASCIENT. I suck at spelling on the fly. I need to write things down. But anyway, that is an herb that brings blood into the area where it's applied. And so you can make your own oregano oil by diluting, or I should say by steeping oregano in infused oils, and or in olive oil to make an infused oil. If you've never made an infused oil before, it's more than just putting a sprig of the plant in a big jar of oil. You're actually using quite a bit of plant. And if you look me up on basmati.com, the last name is HELT as in Tom, and you type in infused oils, you'll learn how to make your own infused oils. Now, I want to come back to oregano essential oil, because this is a really, really popular nutraceutical right now. And the thing to be aware of with oregano essential oil is that it's hot, and it can be quite irritating. Now, the studies in terms of skin irritation come back a little mixed. Robert Tizern's great book on safety talks about it being highly irritating in different animal models, but in at least one study in humans, diluted oregano oil seemed to be okay on the skin. I would make sure it's well diluted if you're going to use the essential oil topically. So the essential oil, or oregano essential oil, is very different than oregano infused oil. Essential oils are extremely strong, concentrated fractions of a plant. They're the volatile molecules, the aromatic molecules from a plant. So oregano essential oil, possibly skin irritant. Not really clear there. But it is a mucous membrane irritant. There's a moderate risk, according to Tizerand, for it to piss off your mucous membrane. So that's something to consider if you're swallowing those oregano oil capsules. Yes, it's strongly antimicrobial. You'll see great effects on various types of infections in the body, but I just use the liquid extract or the tea, and it works just fine. It has essential oil in it, but at the dilution that nature really intended rather than as a concentrated essential oil. Also, taking oregano oil internally, there is a potential for interaction with things like diabetes medications, because the carvacrol, one of the main essential oil components of oregano essential oil, lowers blood sugar levels. So there can be unwanted effects where you possibly could wind up with really low blood sugar. And a lot of the blood thinning effects of oregano itself do come from the essential oil, so it would not be appropriate to take the essential oil orally if you are taking blood thinning medications, if you have any blood clotting disorders or bleeding disorders as well. It's also not a good idea to use if you have ulcers or ulcerations in the digestive tract. For those of you who know my teaching, I'm not a big fan of using essential oils internally unless you are under the guidance of a trained clinical aromatherapist, not a sales rep, but somebody who's truly trained in aromatherapy. In France, it's not unusual in their tradition to use essential oils orally, but they're done for short amounts of time. They're done in an appropriate manner for an acute issue. Yeah, so I feel compelled to just throw my opinion out there on the essential oil. Now, I will sometimes use oregano essential oil for inhalation. And so, for instance, if your head feels like a basketball and you've got a really horrible sinus infection or lung infection, you can boil some water and then pour it in a bowl, a heavy bowl that you're not going to easily knock over. Let it cool a little bit, but while it still has some steam coming up, you can put 4 or 5 drops of oregano essential oil in, or maybe blend it with some other essential oils, and then breathe that steam in for about 5 or 10 minutes with a towel over your head, and that can help dealing with infections. But you don't want to use that same oil repeatedly because it is a mucous membrane irritant, and what you may find is if you keep doing that, you might actually start to aggravate your sinuses. But in a pinch, especially, right in the acute phase of feeling like crap and your sinuses feeling like crap, you can do a couple steams with it and then maybe switch to some more soothing oils to use for your steam instead. I know at least one of my teachers for aromatherapy, instead of oregano oil, oregano essential oil, she tends to recommend the use of marjoram essential oil. So same genus, a lot of similar uses, but much milder, and it actually smells a heck of a lot better as well. And so with that, there is oregano, a really wonderful cooking and healing plant to stick in your garden. Until next time, be well.